So tell me who you are to begin with,
Eric Mizrahi, internal medicine practice in Brentwood.
and how long have you been practicing?
14 years at this office, graduated in 93, so it's been a while.
Okay. And you're not just a diet doctor, but I wanted to talk about the Brentwood Diet. So if you could just tell me uh, what the diet is to begin with, and then we'll go into how it might differ from other diets.
Perfect, that's a great segue. I'm an internist, so I practice internal medicine,
Okay.
and that encompasses all of the general medical needs for adults, although I see all ages. And the diet bore out of that, basically. As an internist, soon realized most of the problems that most people were coming with were related to weight or diet. Hypertension, diabetes, obesity, sleep apnea, a whole host of other, and the things that made them even worse. So degenerative hips, heart disease, um, arthritis, just a whole lot of other conditions that weight contributes and makes worse. And so, what you do when you're an internist and you're faced with a population of patients who are unhealthy, sick from their own doing, and for whom medications don't really help a whole lot. Even my diabetics, what happens after you've maxed out on 400 units of insulin a day? You need to find another solution. And so the main problem I tried to solve initially, and that was almost 14 years ago, maybe a little bit more, was mainly diabetes. Type 2 diabetes was what gave rise to the diet. And essentially, diabetes is a sugar disease. If you imagine, there's two types, so we'll deal with type 2 because it's a more prevalent one now. The problem with diabetes is like an inferno, it's like a fire. The best way to kill a fire is to take its oxygen away. On this diet, I designed it so that I took all the sugar away. And so immediately everybody thought it was the Atkins diet. I go, not quite. It resembles Atkins a lot, but Atkins allowed you a little bit of carbs and allowed you a little bit of fat, or actually pretty much any fats you wanted. This one, I wanted to remove everything altogether. And so I hand wrote the first version of the diet. I still remember the patient I did it for. And the main thing was to have the same food every day so that I could measurably tell what his sugars were going to do. And so his instructions were simple. Couple eggs in the morning, can or two of tuna at lunch, chicken breast at night for dinner. Check your sugar 3 times a day and call me with the results. And so I'm kind of embarrassed to say, because on him being the first patient, I kind of messed up. I didn't realize how strong the diet would be and how effective it would be and how quickly it would work. But I get a call from him the next morning. He wakes up and his sugar is 90. And he goes, I have a mouthful of pills and my insulin to take. My sugar is 90. What do I do? I go, celebrate. And he goes, no, seriously, doc, what do I do? I go, don't do anything. Just have breakfast. We'll see how you're doing at lunch. Calls me at lunch. Sugar was still in normal range. Calls me at dinner. Sugar still normal range. And he goes, what do I do with my pills tomorrow? I go, let's just hold on and just see what happens tomorrow. Wakes up the next day, sugar still normal. This is somebody who's taking an enormous amount of insulin and other medications. And so my mistake was that I should have told him to stop them ahead of time, but I didn't know it would work that fast. But on the subsequent patients, I did. And so from then on, all of the type 2 diabetics got to be on this diet. And the most dramatic change was for one patient who was spending all day in the bathroom shooting up insulin, 400 units a day. And I got him to be completely off of insulin and lose all the excessive weight, this and that. And he went from being a bulldog, everybody nicknamed him because he was a very angry person all the time, to the most congenial person of all. And so the problem that I soon realized was happening with the way we treat diabetes is that once you go either on the pills that kind of crank up how much insulin you release, the glipizides, glyburide, all of those, they have to decrease your sugar, and they do it so strongly that now you have to do the snacks in between so you don't bottom out your sugar.
Right.
So you can't lose weight when you're being forced to eat to prevent your sugar from bottoming out. And so it's a vicious cycle. You make your chemistries look good on paper, but your body look worse in 3D. And so for me, that never made sense as a solution. It does help prevent the complications of diabetes, neuropathy, etc., because you control the sugar within a tighter range. It does, but then you end up with a whole lot of obese patients. The counting the carbs, the counting the calories is so oppressive to most people that they can't stay on those diets either. So they end up taking more and more medications just to kind of offset what they eat. Insulin is even worse. Insulin's a growth hormone. You take insulin, it definitely opens up your appetite, makes you more hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So you get into this vicious cycle where you're hungry, take more insulin, you're hungry, you take insulin, and you just balloon out. Beauty of this diet, it's medication free, with the exception of a drug I really like, metformin. Glucophage, metformin, basically helps control your sugar at the liver level, and it doesn't bottom you out. And so you can take a pill even with a sugar of 70 and it won't bottom you out.
For a diabetic.
For a diabetic or anyone else.
Okay.
Because we use glucophage also for people who have PCOS syndrome, polycystic ovary syndrome, and that facilitates their ability to get pregnant. And so it's got a lot of other benefits for a lot of other diseases. But as far as diabetes, that's the one that if people have diabetes, I still like them to take, to be on it. It's just an added level of safety. And that way, as an internist, I'm still practicing as an internist. I still get to prescribe those. But the diet does the heavy lifting for diabetics.
Now, this diet's also very low in sodium. Is that more for your heart patients, high blood pressure?
The diet works so well on diabetes that I tried it on other things.
Okay.
And anytime I had patients who were maxed out on drugs, like with congestive heart failure, I said, well, let's try the diet, because a lot of the congestive heart failure patients are also overweight. And so the original setting for the diet, and the reason I didn't have any salt and spices and anything on the diet, was that I didn't want food to be tasty. I want people to eat because they're hungry, and there's no portion control on this diet. Eat as much as you want, but it has no taste. It just has the basic taste of what chicken and beer tastes and what veggies taste by themselves, etc. If something tastes good, you eat it even after you're full. And the nice thing is we have satiety controls and mechanisms in our body, but we defeated them by making food taste good, smell good, look good. A lion eats the gazelle until he's full and walks away. He doesn't eat it just because it's social and he enjoys it. And there's no salt, pepper, or ketchup next to the gazelle when he's eating. And so I try to reproduce that with humans. Eat until you're full. Be full. Most people on the diet, after 2-3 days, they lose their appetite anyway because the food is so unappetizing that they don't. And now we go into the force feeding, where you got to eat at least your basic amounts just to not lose muscle mass. But to come back to the salt and the issue, people who have congestive heart failure have a tendency to retain so much water that they have fluid in the lungs, and now they have to take a lot of Lasix to get some of that fluid out so they can breathe. Salt and sugar, not just salt, but salt and sugar both tend to retain water. When people go on the diet, they lose a lot of the fluid overload, a lot of the excess water that they carry. And amazingly enough, when I put my CHF patients on this diet, I was able to cut out most of their meds as well. And for sure, diuretics were out. The problem with diuretics, as much as they're effective in reducing the water you retain, they're very, very harsh on the kidneys, and they really damage the kidneys over time. And so whenever you can treat someone, and it's hard to negotiate when they have a life-threatening disease, it's always best if you can minimize the amount of medication they can take. At the very least, you stretch out the amount of time you can use them for. And so imagine I have a patient who can do well on the diet for 10 years. I've saved their kidneys for 10 years so they can use the diuretics and all those medications for the following 10 years. And so a lot of it is just managing how you're going to spread the risk over time and how you make the disease more livable over time. It's not a cure, but you can do a whole lot better by reducing the workload on your body and on your organs.
What kind of results have you had, even if anecdotally, with people being on this diet since you've had more than a decade of working with people?
It's gone for the whole gamut. I've had patients that are 600 pounds on the diet, have amazing results. I have people who were a mere 300 pounds and go on the diet and have amazing results. A lot of it depends on the patient, how motivated they are. The problem with this diet is not sexy, it's not medications, it's not shots. It's pure discipline and drive. It's not even willpower so much, but drive and willpower and discipline. How hard are you willing to work to get the results? You'll see the same mindset of people in the gym with the huge muscles and everything and bench pressing 300 pounds. How did they get there? You know, some will probably stimulate with growth hormones, etc. But most people, it's just a lot of hard work. This diet is a lot of hard work, but it's doable, and the results are so rapid that they're contagious and infectious. You get to a point where you see yourself losing 10, 12 pounds the first week. How hard is it to not continue? You lose another 6 pounds the following week, another 6 pounds the following week. It's hard not to just stare at the scale every morning and jump out of bed just to see that pound drop that day. And so for many years, I wouldn't do the weight loss for cosmetic purposes when people had 10 or 20 pounds to lose. It's just too much, it's too draconian just for that small a need. I softened that position just because I surrendered to peer pressure and everybody wanting it and asking. And a lot of times patients whose relatives had been very sick and very obese all of a sudden looked better, were the best looking in the family, when at one time they were the worst looking. And then it kind of prompts everybody else to want to go on it. I ended up rationalizing it. They want to sacrifice that hard and be on it, so be it. And so truly you have the whole gamut, from the person who's lost over 100 pounds to over 150 pounds to the person who's lost 20 pounds. The nice thing about this diet is just a really healthy way to eat. It's clean food. It's a clean, healthy way to eat. I have no problems putting kids on it, teenagers on it, anyone on it. The main thing that you learn, other than just having a better body and learning how to eat better, it teaches discipline. And in a society that doesn't have time to teach discipline, when you have both parents work, kids are pretty much raising themselves, and teachers at school don't have time to teach. And so sometimes you're playing catch up with teenagers or late teens, or even kids who are trying to get boyfriends and girlfriends, and their weight gets in the way. And so every once in a while you get a kid that's motivated enough to do it because they have the right reasons. And I'm not ashamed of using and manipulating any kind of condition just to get the benefits. And so if it's because they want a girlfriend or a boyfriend, it's good enough reason to get healthy, and I'll use that.
Okay. Now I know that you have a book in the works, but the diet itself just fits on one sheet of paper.
Keep it stupid simple. Okay? You make it too complicated, you make it too difficult, it's too burdensome. I've always learned that if you can't keep something on one page, no one will learn it, and it's too complicated. And so for me, I like 10 Commandments because we've all been brought up to consider anything as a 10 Commandment is succinct enough to live your life by. There's 613 commandments, but we stick to the top 10.
Right.
And so whatever career or job I've had in the past, I've always narrowed it down to 10 top critical, crucial things. And that's what I did with this diet. Same thing. There are 10 commandments on one side, and all the foods you're allowed and recommended to eat on the other side. It fits on one page.
As well as the foods you should not be eating.
Exactly.
And some of them are surprising to a lot of people. Carrots and cabbage.
It's really,
what people think is healthy.
you have two choices. People ask me which one are the bad foods. There are no bad foods. There are foods that are not good for you. Food itself is neutral. It's like a gun. A gun sitting on the table is neutral. It's just a gun. somebody uses it and points it at someone else, depending on who you're pointing it at, is either good or bad. Food's the same way. And it depends who's eating it. You give a cupcake to a diabetic, it's really, really bad. You give a cupcake to a normal kid as a reward on his birthday, there's nothing wrong with that. It depends on the conditions, circumstances, and who you're giving it to.
Right.
In the diet, the presumption is that weight loss is intended, control diabetes is intended, control congestive heart failure is intended, control of migraines is intended. There's certain things that if you want a certain result, you have to eliminate certain things. So are those things bad for those people? Yeah, if they give you bad consequences, they're bad. But by themselves, they're not bad. It's just for that person, they're bad. And so it's not like I'm shipping them off to Mars and they'll never have opportunity to have those foods again. And people can have them from time to time. They're not toxic. They just don't give them the results they want. And so can a person in CHF never ever have salt again or never have lox again? Preferably, in my absolute, I would say no. Realistically, they're at a wedding and this and that and they're taken by the events. Yeah, they're going to end up suffering that night, not sleeping very well, getting short of breath, but they're not going to die from eating it. Some of them cheat and they'll take a Lasix and the lox, at least for that special occasion, and then go back on the diet.
Right.
There are ways to go through things. I tend to be very black and white and absolute because it takes away confusion. Are people able to do it perfectly? Some are. A lot aren't. The ones who can do it 100% get the best results. The ones who don't. And this will take us into the conversation of ketosis. But the diet depends on zero sugar. It's kind of a white lie because green beans, which are allowed, have trace amounts of sugar. Lettuce has trace amounts of sugar. Cucumbers have trace amounts of sugars, but they're trace.
Yeah.
And in the big scheme of things, they're tolerable and they won't tip you back away from ketosis. What the body can do, it has a couple of different mechanisms by which it generates your metabolism. Metabolism, by my definition, is what allows you to maintain a body temperature of close to 98 degrees. And that's why when people tell me it's my metabolism, I go, baloney. Has your temperature changed? If your temperature doesn't change, it's not your metabolism. Okay. And so it's an abusive language that people use, metabolism, for lack of better understanding. You have to be very sick for your metabolism to be altered. You have pneumonia and you have a fever at 104, your metabolism's altered. You have hyperthyroidism and your temperature rises and your heart raises to 140, you have an altered metabolism. You eat and get fat, you don't. That's just what the body's supposed to do. And losing weight does not speed up your metabolism either. People try to cheat. They'll take Synthroid, thyroid medication to try and lose weight. They'll take amphetamines and try and lose weight. Again, they might work, but not in a healthy way. You're losing the wrong component. You're losing a lot of muscle when you use these medications. And so the whole idea of burning sugar versus burning fat. Burning sugar is a very efficient, very quick, very rapid way of generating energy. It's like rocket fuel. You take sugar, within seconds, you go up, and within minutes, you crash. On the other hand, fat metabolism, which leads to ketosis, is very slow, very tedious, very boring and unsexy. It's like using diesel fuel. You never see a race car using diesel, but all the semis, all the locomotives, everything that you want good gas mileage out of will use diesel fuel. And so for me, I kind of compare them like the same. I go, you got sugar as rocket fuel. You put that in your car, you'll blow up. You put diesel, if you have an engine that will burn diesel, it'll work great. For some people, and that's where you get a bonus. They just do better in ketosis than they do using gasoline. Other people, they don't have that extra bonus, but they do get the benefit from reducing the caloric intake. The nice thing about the high protein diet, it's very lean. So you can eat completely to complete satiety with very few calories. Whereas sugars, they go through you so quickly, it's like having a Chinese meal, right? With all the rice, by the time you go home, you're hungry again.
Right.
And it goes through you very quickly, and it burns very quickly. The problem is you don't burn it very quickly. And so the difference with sugar and protein is when you eat an excess amount of sugar, carbs, rice, pasta, cereal, corn, all those calories that you're digesting, they go into your liver. They get stored there as glycogen for 10, 12, 15 hours. What happens to them afterwards? They end up being stored into long-term storage, into the fat stores. They're not eliminated like protein. Protein, you eat it, even if you overeat it, your body pees it out. There's no storage of protein. It doesn't go into the liver and get stored. What you use, you use. What you lose, you lose. And that's why it's such a nice way to lose weight. Now, when your body wants to burn more than you give it, what are the priorities that take place? And this is where the diet really satisfies a lot of the things that I find important. My primary objective when people are losing weight is, if they have diabetes, to correct that. If they have morbid obesity, to get the fat percent down. On the high protein diet, protein provides so few calories that it forces you to burn your reserves. But at the same time, it protects your muscles, because you've just replaced whatever protein you need to renew your muscle after using it, and you're not going into any muscle debt. Your body looks at your muscles like Legos. It can take them apart, borrow them, and replace them later. Starvation diets will take the Legos apart and not bring all the replacement parts in. And so you're losing muscle mass, you're losing your posture, you're losing your ability to burn anything, because your muscles are what burns most of your energy.
So this is not a starvation diet because you're getting enough protein. Although it's very low calories overall, your body is getting the notifications 3 times a day that it's not starving. Is that a right way of?
That's perfect.
Okay.
And the issue with starvation or malnutrition, my definition of malnutrition is when your body does not get what it needs.
So this is maybe 50, 60 grams of protein a day, maybe a little more.
As much as you want. There's no limit. Most
So
people can't eat all that much protein.
yeah.
You get full.
So it's a high percentage of protein, but it's not like 300
Exactly.
grams like some bodybuilders might be taking when they have protein shakes, for example.
Well, that's a big difference. I can address
Yeah.
that in a minute. The thing with protein is the metabolism of protein is not complete. It's not like the carbohydrates where you get 4 calories per gram. Protein, you get 3.75. There's an ammonia group at the end that doesn't get digested, doesn't get broken down. And that's what you end up peeing as ammonia or nitrogen in the urine, urea.
Okay.
That already is a windfall. You got to eat it. You didn't have to gain it in any kind of energy.
Right.
The second part is the breakdown, the metabolic breakdown of protein produces ammonia, nitrogen-based products. They cause you to have a little bit of, not of frank nausea, but it gives you a sense of satiety. It makes you feel full. And so it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. One, you eat enough to replace all the molecules of protein and things like that you need to replace your muscle mass with. But it also makes you feel full and not hungry. Sugar, on the other hand, stimulates insulin and cranks up. You're always more and more hungry. The minute you start eating carbs, you get hungrier and you got to eat more and you can't stop. Similar to like when you're eating salsa and corn chips. The only time you stop eating, number one, is when you run out of salsa. Okay. Amazingly enough, you can stop eating chips as long as you run out of salsa. As long as there's salsa there, you keep finding a way to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the spices and the taste comes in.
Mm.
But if you were to eat corn chips or any kind of chips, you get to a point where after a while you get full. But it takes a whole lot longer with carbs than it would with protein.
Mm.
You can eat a pound of steak and be done and full. You'll probably go through 2 and 3 pounds of chips before you say, hey, I've had enough and I'm stopping.
And that's why when I've worked in an office before, for example, you hit this mid-afternoon crash and go get more sugar, and you're grazing pretty much all day on this roller coaster of blood sugar up and down.
Exactly. Whereas if you have your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner protein, you don't get this.
Yeah.
You just get the nice level.
And at the
steady.
same office, I just did the diet. I brought my tuna. I brushed my teeth real good after, just be in contact with other people. But I didn't have to go get the snack at the candy bar machine or anything like that.
The problem I used to see most often was people who rush out of the house without breakfast.
Mm.
They're in a hurry. They rush to work. They get to work. They might drink a cup of coffee or two. By 10 o'clock, they're crashing. Open the drawer, grab a Milky Way, fire it up.
Right.
Now their brain's on fire during their 10 o'clock meeting. That's when they're supposed to be sharp and well functioning and well reasoning and thinking, and their brain's just fried on cocaine basically.
Yeah.
Right after the meeting they crash, but in the meantime they're not hungry for lunch. So they end up having maybe a salad or just a little nothing for lunch. And by 3 o'clock they're crashing again.
Exactly.
For the second Milky Way. Now you're eating a lot of empty calories. They're more fattening than what a normal meal would have been. And all you're doing is crashing and probably going home and ruining your dinner as well. And so the nice thing about the way this diet is structured, you have to have breakfast. You can't skip it. And so you start off right. 2 eggs will take you to lunch no matter what your day is like. And sometimes you're still full from the eggs at lunch, but you got to force your protein at lunch, so you got to eat your tuna again.
Mm-hmm.
And that will carry you to dinner. And so it's like hopscotch, but you go from safe to safe to safe to safe to safe to safe. And it becomes a very predictable pattern for your body. And it's able to lose weight without having to worry about starvation.